Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show, Curryupstartup Leadership Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world class Asian entrepreneurs, C suite executives, innovators, and leaders who provide candid insights from their personal journey to inspire you. And this is your host, Priyanka Kumla, joining you on our 84th episode of Curryupstartup Leadership Podcast. As a quick reminder, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, do continue following me, Priyanka Kumla, and a Curryupstartup Leadership Podcast page to get your LinkedIn live notifications. We're also on YouTube, so give us a subscribe and a like if you're watching us on YouTube. Today, I have with you a very special episode, and I should say a fabulous guest who's focused on personal branding for professionals, especially millennials and entrepreneurs. So let's welcome that special guest of mine, Ketaki Vaidya. Hi, Ketaki. Welcome to my show.
Hey Priyanka, I'm so excited to be on this show. I've been a loyal listener of this podcast, and it has kind of become like my Sunday night ritual watching your podcast episodes. And thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Ketaki is joining us from India. So, Ketaki, tell us where exactly you're located in India and some fun trivia about your place that you are located in.
Okay, so I am right now in Mumbai. I'm from Mumbai, India, and this is a city that never sleeps. And this is a city of dreams where people come with their struggles and they eventually realize their dreams. That's what it's known for.
That's awesome. So Mumbai is one of those metropolitan hubs, and I should say also a fashion capital for India as well. So
True.
Ketaki, she's such a special guest of mine because she's been a loyal listener, as she rightly pointed out, and she's always given me inputs and feedback about, how we can continue to brand this show to the next level. So thank you, Ketaki, and I'm super honored. You're one of my unique guests who is also a listener and a host herself, and now my own guest. So super excited to have you on the show.
And just a disclaimer for our listeners that Priyanka is going to be on my show soon. So that episode releases in February, and we'll get to that when it comes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ketaki. Such an honor to be on your show as well and talk about my personal branding journey too.
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, why you should be listening to this episode of Curryup Startup Leadership Podcast. One, Ketaki is a personal branding expert, as I pointed out. She hosts a video series called Personal Branding for Professionals, which aims to spotlight powerful personal brands from around the world to inspire professionals to get started on their personal branding journey. She's also a woman in STEM. She's passionate towards addressing the gender gap in the STEM field. She's worked with various initiatives to do her share in getting more girls to be part of the empowering STEM experience. And she was recently highlighted as part of the 1 million Women in STEM campaign. That's super cool, Ketaki.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the introduction.
Sure, and I haven't forgotten the fact that she currently works as a software developer for the artificial intelligence team at Oracle India as well. So kudos on such fun side hustles while continuing your endeavor to bring in more women into STEM.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a journey, but it's really empowering in itself.
That's awesome. To our listeners, I hope this gives you enough reasons to watch this episode. There's a fun free mentoring session to be won with Ketaki so you can get started on your personal branding journey or elevate it to the next level. All you have to do is drop in a quick hello and the country that you are tuning in from if you're watching us live or on replay and grab this exclusive mentoring session. All right, Ketaki, are you excited to dive deep into the show?
Yes, I'm excited. All yours for it.
All right, Ketaki. So let's get started with the word personal brand. How do you define personal brand?
Okay, so if we look at ourselves today, Priyanka, one thing that even though we don't realize, we always function through a set of ideas and beliefs that we live by. And that defines what we do at every moment. That defines what decisions we take and what decisions we have taken in the past and what we are going to do in the future as well. But that's what constitutes your personal brand, and that's about what makes your story. So personal branding is about sharing your story with the world, and if I have to say it in one line, it's about finding your light and spreading it to the world.
That's pretty awesome. Thanks for helping us define personal branding. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you onto the show, Ketaki, is I've given several talks on personal branding. And the question that always pops up is, do I need to have a brand? Why do we need a brand? I'm not, so and so. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not the CEO or an entrepreneur. There are several reasons why we pull ourselves back from getting into that personal branding strategy. But tell us, why do we need a personal brand?
That's a very interesting question. And I think we all forget that even though we don't work towards our brand, we already have a brand. So, unintentionally, everything that we do, every decision that we take, is already defining our personal brand. And when you begin consciously making decisions in the direction where you want to influence your public perception and where you try to communicate your value to the world, that is when you realize what personal branding truly is. And when you start doing that, you foster trust in your personal and professional relationships, because now people know what drives you, they know what you're passionate about, what is your why, or what is your purpose in life. And that helps them to connect with you, not on an intellectual level but on an emotional level. So if I have to take my example, if I say that I am a software developer at Oracle and I work with the artificial intelligence team, a natural question that someone might ask me is, okay, tell us more about how do I get into Oracle, or how do I work in the field of artificial intelligence. That's one question, but that's still intellectual. If I tell them that I am passionate about addressing the gender gap that exists in the STEM fields, then that helps them to connect with me on an emotional level, because now they relate to me and they know that this is my purpose. So personal branding is about adding that personal touch to your story, and it's about sharing your story with the world. And even though we don't intend to do it, we already send a definition to the universe. So it's about tweaking that definition in such a way that you influence what you want to stand for. And not this is just one of the benefit that it helps you build trust, but it also attracts a lot of opportunities, because even when you are not in a room, you know that people are talking about you, you know that they are associating you to that purpose which you have defined for yourself, and that helps them to give you a lot of opportunities. So these are just some of the benefits that it can give you. It can definitely elevate your credibility at workplace, because now people know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you are being vulnerable by sharing your story with them. So these are some of the benefits, but I would say that these are just external benefits. The biggest benefit is the one that is internal, where you feel a sense of contentment that you are giving back to the community, and that you are more than your work, and that you are maybe living to the truest potential. So that's a different feeling. So when you begin on that personal branding journey, it gives you a sense of empowering yourself, where you know that you're on the right track and you're doing everything that you can in your abilities to influence and elevate the lives of people around you. So that's the
That's
reason that
ve-
you have a brand.
that's very true. It's not just for you; it's for the people around you as well.
Exactly.
All right. On that note, I'm going to acknowledge a couple of our live listeners, so you get a chance to say hello, Ketaki, to some of our guests as well, guest listeners as well. We have Satya K, who says hi, Priyanka. Hi, Satya. Welcome to the show. We have Sarah Plesnak, who's joining from the US. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sarah.
And we have Nicole Orsi Barloni, who's from Canada. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining us live.
Nicole is my close friend, so I'm really glad she's here.
Awesome. That's how you support other women, right? So glad
Exactly.
Nicole was able to join us. All right. So now that we've defined what a brand means and why we need a brand, let's talk about your challenges. What are the top three challenges you have faced as you've built your personal brand?
All right. So the I think the biggest challenge that I faced was to understand who I am, because in the world that we live in today, there are so many distractions. There are these constant temptations that we stick to, and we get so engrossed in that we never find time for ourselves. We never find time to sit and think, take a step back and think, what is it that drives me? Why am I this way? And what is it that makes me unique? So finding my why, that was the biggest challenge, because it took me a lot of time, and I thought that I was good at this and I was good at that, but I never understood what my purpose really was. So it took me a lot of time to figure that out. It took me a few experiments, a few failures to get there, but eventually I did find that my forte was in personal branding, and it was to help people as much as I could in that aspect. So that was one challenge. The other challenge that I faced was some people can be really obnoxious, and when you begin your personal branding journey, they do everything that they can in their abilities to discourage you. So there were comments that I used to get that this is not relevant to your resume, this is not going to help you land a job, don't do it. And that was the initial struggles that I had. And when I started getting some traction, when I started getting momentum on my post, and these were the same set of people who went and said that, hey, I know Kirti, right? So that's how the attitude changed. But there were people in my closer circle too who tried to discourage me, and that brought me to a very low point at a lot of times. But the way that I came out of all of this was to think that my purpose was much bigger than any lows that I would face along the way. And that's how I overcame these struggles and still kept going. And then these small wins, I celebrated all of them. I tried to overcome my struggles. And that is how I overcame all these struggles that I had.
Thank you, Ketaki, for sharing those vulnerable personal aspects of your journey. Talk to us a little bit about that why discovery process. How did you set your mind in terms of digging deeper into that why aspect?
So one thing that people today they have, so even if when you type personal branding on the internet and you see that there's this tool to find your why and there's this tool to find your why and there's so many tools, but I would say that the most efficient tool is just a pen and paper. So you sit in a room, isolate yourself from everyone else, and you will not find the answers in a day. It will not be so easy because we never dig so deep. We never think about these things in today's world. We hardly have time to sit and think what is it that we want to define ourselves with. And so it really takes a lot of time when you initially begin, and you have to, that is also an art to learn to talk to yourself and learn to introspect yourself. So it doesn't come very easily. So in just take a pen and paper, sit at it maybe 2 minutes a day initially when you are absolutely impatient, but keep going, and you will start observing things in your daily life where you will do things not because you want to, because you are driven towards it, not because you have to, but because you want to do those things. And there are these things that give you a small sense of happiness, which you have to identify, and that will help you to connect with what your why is. So it might be very small to start with, but it will evolve along the way. So one common mistake that people make is they try to find the perfect why that they want to start their journey with, but it's never that easy. So you can start with a basic why. Your why can be as simple as I want to help people around me. Let's figure out what that specific things are going to be at a later stage, but just start with the fact that you want to help people. Now where do you want to help people? So you send out a few posts on LinkedIn, you do make a few YouTube videos, you can choose any platform and experiment, see what is it that people are most resonating with, because that's the part where you'll be the most authentic self of your version, and maybe that's the fact that is attracting people to you. So it's about finding these small things that are interrelated to the bigger why, and your why can definitely evolve along the way. But just get started with a basic why that comes to your mind. So just take a pen and paper, and introspect yourself a little every day. It might take 2 months, it might take a year, but once you get started, you will definitely get there.
That's awesome. And as you've started talking about why, I've been rethinking about my why, which I want to share with our listeners. So it's more like a live session that we have with Ketaki, the personal branding expert right here. So Ketaki, for the Career Startup Leadership Podcast, the why for our podcast has been to spotlight Asian leaders. So that's one aspect. And the second aspect is to inspire people based on the personal and leadership journeys of, these Asian leaders. So that's been my why. So, say for example, some of our listeners sit with a pen and paper and start thinking about your why. What is the logical next step you'll have to take? Because, people start thinking about, oh, I have a podcast, say for example. Next, I
Mhm.
need to be on Instagram because that's where you get a lot of listeners and downloads, and I want to be viral and be an influencer. But you fail to figure out like who your audience is and where that audience is in order to figure out the right kind of platforms to reach them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, the step-by-step process. Once I figure out the why, what do I do next?
Right. So if we look at it at a holistic level, personal branding, the entire personal branding journey can be divided into three phases. One is where you're finding your why. So even if all the platforms in the world were taken away from you, what is that one message that you want to give to the world, no matter how many struggles you face? That's your why. Once you find your why, the next part is building your brand. That's when you choose your platform. So it again drills down to who do you want to spread the message to. In my case, it might be professionals. In your case, it is the entire Asian community. You want to spotlight their stories to the world. So the entire world is your audience in this case. So then you define that, okay, this is my audience. Maybe they are on this platform, and maybe I should target this platform first. So you don't have to be on a billion platforms to build your brand. And we often face this fear of missing out, where we are not on one platform and we think that we are losing out on a lot of likes and subscribers and views. But that's one mistake that we make, because we ourselves have to be very comfortable with that platform first. So if Twitter is not for you, don't go on Twitter. If LinkedIn is the place where you are targeting professionals and that's where professionals are, then maybe start little by little on LinkedIn and try building your brand there. Try showcasing your why there. So you have to choose the platform very carefully, because this is the place where you're going to engage with people. This is the place where you're going to build relationships with a lot of people, and that has to be authentic. It doesn't have to be forced, and for that you have to absolutely be comfortable with that particular platform. So you can just start with two or three. Later on you can expand that to 1,000 other channels when you get a lot of momentum. But initially, when you start, just pick two and three and begin spreading that message. That's more important. It's not important that you have thousands of channels in the beginning, but it's important that people are able to relate to what you're saying. That's the next step after finding your why.
Alrighty, I have a couple of comments from our live listeners. So you get a chance to know the impact you've already created.
Sure.
Of course, we have Nicole, who's a big fan of you, which she wants to reiterate again. Thanks, Nicole, for sharing that. We have Satya, who says, very interesting and impressive interview. Thanks, Satya,
Thank
for that kind words as well. Now, Ketaki, networking is a critical aspect as part of your personal branding. So, what are some tips to network effectively?
So I had written a LinkedIn post on this a few days ago, so I'll just talk about it again. There are, when you think about networking, and this was a common mistake that I was making in my initial days too. When you think about networking, there are two modes to it. One is passive networking. In passive networking, you only focus on, let's consider the case of LinkedIn. So in case of passive networking, you only consider the number of connections that you have, or maybe you focus on the quantity. So I send out, maybe I get up every day, and I was thinking that I was networking very well, but I was just randomly sending connection requests to people, 10 people every day. Some connected with me, some did not connect, and that's how I was growing. And I thought that was what networking was all about. But it was only in the last few months that I understood how maybe one connection can totally change your life, or maybe one connection can become so close to you that it will change the way you look at life. And that happens when you do active networking. So for active networking, what you do is you send out personalized invites. You engage with people that you resonate with. So it's not a forced thing. You only look at those posts which really inspire you, and you comment on those posts. You build a relationship with that particular person, and then you send out personalized invites. You have a goal for networking. So let's say that for me, sometimes it might be about the data science community. So for me, sometimes it might be about gathering women in STEM in my community, or it can be about interviewing someone, so looking at someone who can be a speaker on my show. So you have to start with a goal, and once you start with a goal, you have to build relationships. So you have to focus on the breadth, on the depth of your connections, not the breadth of it. And when you understand that, you begin to have such beautiful relationships which are there, and this becomes your tribe. These are the people who support you no matter what happens, and that's how you realize how beautiful networking can be. So if you try these are some of the strategies, but these strategies can really differentiate the approach that you take towards how much ever time you're spending towards networking every day.
It's effectively connecting with at least a handful of authentic people who will then
Exactly.
amplify your message rather than trying to look for the volume of connections.
Exactly.
All right. So, Katie, I'm just curious. You have your full time job as a software developer. How do you constantly keep yourself up to date on personal branding strategies? What are some resources that you constantly look at?
Okay, so I think when what you have inside is a fire, right? When what you have inside is something that drives you, it becomes more than yourself. It becomes more than your everyday activities, and that's why whenever I find any little void in my day where I maybe there's something at work, there's an impediment at work, or maybe before I start my work or after I complete my work, there's a lot of time, and in all of those empty spaces that I find in my day, I try to look at other podcasts. I try to see and learn from people's stories, because that's what is the most mysterious to me. The people have such different stories, and they have such different ways of looking at life, and that's what personal branding is, right? So I am so awed by the amount of stories that I get to see every day. So I just look at different LinkedIn profiles. I look at their activity. I try to analyze what kind of a person this is, what is it that they try to share the most, what is it that drives them the most, and I try to find their purpose. And then I read up a few articles. Whenever I read up some books on it, I write articles on it. And I have discovered that when I write about something, I learn about it better. So I try to write a few articles on that. I try to have a lot of coffee chats with people, where I try to build relationship with them. And for most of these coffee chats, I don't have any agenda. I just go there and try to learn about what that person is doing, and why is it that they are living their life in this way, and why is it that I focus on my life in such a different way. So that's just some of the things that I try and learn, and that gives me a good foundation of what my next personal branding strategy should be.
Speaking of which, to our listeners, do follow Ketaki Vaidya on LinkedIn because she writes a lot of interesting posts, and do follow her hashtag on LinkedIn. Can you remind us what your hashtag is on LinkedIn?
It's hash Ketaki Vaidya, just my name.
That's awesome. So that's one of the future branding strategies where you have a personal hashtag that people could follow in the long run as well. So yeah, that's very interesting, and I've learned a lot from your personal branding strategies as well because curiosity is very important as you continue to grow. Right? You just can't stay static, and being a lifelong learner needs to be part of your leadership trait.
Exactly.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the video podcast series that you host on YouTube, the podcast, the show that you have for personal branding for professionals.
Right. So the video podcast is called the Personal Branding for Professionals, as you said, and I'll tell you about how it started. So during the lockdown, I always had this intention of giving back to the community, but somehow I had played tricks with my own brain, and I thought that when I become a leader in my industry, it is at that point of time when I will start giving back to the community. And then during the lockdown, because I had so much of time to think to myself, which I usually didn't find amidst the chaos of office and commute and everything. So I took some time to think about my why, and that's when I figured out that I will become a leader someday, but all of this does not have to wait till then. And then I started talking to a few people, and I started to figure out what my why was. And one thing that I discovered was that everyone that I was surrounded with, they were so complacent about their work. They were excelling at their work, but beyond that, they didn't have anything that they were finding their purpose. So they were just happy that they were excelling at their job and they were doing good, and their entire brand just kind of
Looks like we might be experiencing a little bit of technical glitch. All right, so looks like there's a little bit of technical glitch from Ketaki. Let's try to add her back again to see if we can get her back. In the meantime, some of the personal branding strategies that Ketaki had shared with us, which includes, thinking of your why. I think that's very critical for a lot of us to just sit through and think through about what your why is. Is it about inspiring people? Is it about helping others succeed? So keep thinking of your why. And the networking strategy that she suggested, which is to we were just trying to pull her back in. So the networking strategy that she spoke about, which is having a structured way in which you reach out to people in a very customized, tailored manner. So your invites actually have the eyeballs of your connection request as well. We have a quick comment from Nicole where we were speaking about the networking strategies, which is to have quality over quantity. True and meaningful connections are the key to effective networking. Very true, Nicole, and we really agree with you on that aspect as well. All righty, let's see if we can get Ketaki back. All right, hey Ketaki, welcome back.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. And we were reiterating the why and the networking strategy as we had the technical glitch. So thanks for joining us back. So let's continue talking about the YouTube channel that we were speaking earlier on.
Yeah, so as I said, and I hope you can hear me fine. Just let me
Yes.
know if there's any delay because you're still frozen at my end. And these are the
We
common
can hear
problems
you.
of 2020. So it's
We
okay.
can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay. So as I was speaking about the YouTube channel, that's how it began. I thought that a lot of work were too focused on their work, and they did not realize that they had their work was just one aspect of their entire personality, and that they were a whole person. So I wanted to motivate people to share their stories with the world, and not self-reject them because they often felt that their story was identical, or that they were just average, or they were ordinary. So I wanted everyone to start sharing their stories with the people around them. And that's how that's the underlying foundation of why I started this video podcast. And initially, I was very skeptical of how many people would be ready to help me, how many would really be willing to be on my show, because I was just getting started. I had no subscribers, and I had no proofs that it was all going to work. But I was amazed at how many people were ready to offer their support, and that kept me going, and that's how this podcast started. So our purpose mainly is to spotlight stories across the globe that can help today's professionals to build their own personal branding journey, and to show them that it can really be overwhelming at first, but you just have to take it one step at a time, and you should be good.
That's awesome. Is there a dream guest of yours that you want to have on your show?
I cannot hear you again.
Do you have a dream guest for your show?
So the dream guest on my show is my role model Sheryl Sandberg. I hope that I can get her on my show someday, but we'll see
That's
how it goes.
Hey, that's awesome. You never know. All right, so
Yeah.
we we have a fun rapid fire round for you, Ketaki. Are you ready for it? So you tell us
Yes,
the first
absolutely.
thing. You tell us the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the following in one word: role model.
Okay. Sheryl Sandberg, as I already told you.
What does happiness mean to you?
So happiness for me, I'll again revert back to one of the lines that I read recently in a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and it says that happiness cannot be pursued; it must ensue. So happiness for me is a choice that I make every day. I choose to be happy in spite of everything around me.
Can you share a fun thing about you that you haven't shared with anybody else?
Okay, so I haven't confessed about this anywhere, but because I have a video podcast, I have to ask people to like, share, and subscribe, and that's the part that I hate the most. So when I expand and when I hire people, maybe I will ask them to do that instead of me doing it.
That's the challenge for every podcaster out there.
Yeah.
One last question for you. What is your native language and one word to describe yourself in it?
In my native language.
Yes.
So my native language is Marathi, and one word to describe me, I think, would be this is really tough, but
We'll end with a tough question.
I
The
think
stronger the question.
parakrami.
And what does it mean in English?
Parakrami is a word, and the meaning is a revolutionary. I would just like to consider myself that.
Hey, why not? You never know, right? So, and I think as young millennials, we need to focus on our ambitions and lead an independent, fruitful life. You know, ensue your happiness within yourself. Whatever gives you happiness, that's what matters the most. We've reached the end of the episode. Do you have any parting thoughts for listeners, Ketaki?
Any parting thoughts? I think I cannot hear you very clearly, but I think what you're asking right now is about parting thoughts. I
Parting
just
thoughts?
heard that. So yeah, one thing that I would like to say is I've heard about this podcast a lot, and that's how I started tuning into it every Sunday. And the most beautiful part of this podcast for me, is the fact that I get to learn about so many amazing Asian stories that I otherwise wouldn't have heard. So, thank you to your podcast for providing this channel through which we can open ourselves to all the possibilities that our personal branding journeys can get us to. And the parting thoughts for listeners would be that don't give up on yourself. just find your why and get started.
Thank you so much, Ketaki, for that wonderful note to finish our podcast. And I have a quick comment from one of our listeners, Satya, who says, it's good that you're helping the community. Thank you, Satya, for those wonderful words. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being on our show and tuning live on this 84th episode of Curryup Startup Leadership Podcast to spotlight world-class Asian leaders. Three takeaways for me personally is one, figure out your why as part of your personal branding journey. And two, network effectively by focusing on the quality by writing, say, customized invitations and getting to know your LinkedIn followers, say, for example, or your followers anywhere in a very authentic way. And three, and the most important aspect of all is be your own revolutionary, as what Ketaki pointed out. And I think you have to be unapologetically feel good about the recognition that you deserve and the ambitions that you have in place. So I think those are three wonderful takeaways for me, Ketaki. Thank you so much for that. And as a reminder, I would say go ahead and follow Ketaki on LinkedIn to get to her posts, which are very fantastic, especially on the personal branding side of it. And do subscribe to her YouTube channel, which is for personal branding for professionals. And Ketaki is going to leave a link to her YouTube channel as part of our episode notes as well. So you get a chance to learn more about her and her guests as well. Two final comments from our live listeners. We have Preeti Suri, who just caught us at the tail end, but she says, such a great session. Thank you so much, Preeti. We also have Nicole, who says, thank you, Priyanka and Ketaki, for that insightful conversation. Thank you so much. And as a quick reminder to our listeners, we have a free mentoring session that you can win with Ketaki. So all you have to do is drop in a quick hello and a question or a key takeaway now that we've wrapped up the episode. And one lucky listener is going to get a free mentoring session with Ketaki herself. Thank you so much, Ketaki. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm so glad I've spent this Sunday by learning some insightful aspects of personal branding as well. Thanks so much. And to our listeners, follow me tomorrow for another interesting episode. We have some amazing lineup of guests coming up. Until then, this is Priyanka Komla signing off from Curryup Startup Leadership Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world-class Asian leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators who provide candid insights from the personal journey to inspire you. And if you're hearing this on a podcast streaming platform, do give us a like and a subscribe so we get a chance to know how this podcast has inspired you. Thank you so much again and see you tomorrow.